Johnny Cash didn't think Sammy Davis Jr. could handle real gospel music, so he dared him to sing "Amazing Grace" live on stage. What came out of Sammy's soul that night left Cash in tears and changed how both men understood the power of faith through music. It was September 14, 1968, and the Grand Ole Opry House in Nashville was hosting one of the most unusual evenings in country music history. The venue, sacred to country music purists, was presenting Crossroads of American Music, a special television taping that brought together artists from different genres to explore the roots and connections between various forms of American musical expression. Johnny Cash, at the height of his popularity following his legendary prison concerts, was the evening's headliner and host. Known for his deep, authoritative voice, his unwavering Christian faith, and his no-nonsense approach to both music and life, Cash commanded respect throughout the music industry. But he also carried strong opinions about authenticity in music, particularly when it came to gospel and spiritual songs. Sammy Davis Jr. had been invited to the special as a representative of the entertainment and jazz world, bringing his versatility and showmanship to what was intended to be a celebration of American music's diverse traditions. However, Cash had privately expressed reservations about Sammy's inclusion, particularly when it came to the evening's planned gospel segment. "I've got nothing against the man's talent," Cash had told the show's producer earlier that week. "But gospel music comes from a specific place, from specific experiences. It's not about entertainment. It's about faith, about struggle, about finding God in the darkest moments of life." The producer had tried to explain that Sammy's background included extensive exposure to spiritual music through his childhood in vaudeville and his later career, but Cash remained skeptical. "We'll see," he had said simply. "When you're singing about the Lord, you can't fake it. The truth comes out one way or another." The evening had proceeded smoothly through several segments featuring various artists performing blues, folk, and country standards. Sammy had impressed the audience with his renditions of jazz classics and had demonstrated his remarkable ability to adapt to different musical styles. But as the time approached for the gospel segment, Cash decided to issue a challenge that would test what he considered the most important quality in spiritual music: authenticity. During a brief break in taping, Cash approached Sammy backstage. The contrast between the two men was striking. Cash tall, imposing, dressed entirely in black, with the kind of weathered face that spoke of hard-won experience. Sammy compact, energetic, impeccably groomed, carrying himself with the confidence of someone who had conquered every entertainment venue in America. "Sammy," Cash said, his voice carrying the gravity that made his spoken words as compelling as his songs, "I want to ask you something, and I hope you won't take it the wrong way." "Of course, Johnny. What's on your mind?" The next segment is gospel music, sacred music. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure you understand what that means. Sammy's expression shifted slightly, recognizing that this was more than casual conversation. "What do you mean by that?" "Gospel music isn't entertainment, Sammy. It's not about impressing an audience or showing off your vocal range. It's about bearing witness to faith, about sharing the deepest truths of the human spirit. It comes from a place of genuine relationship with God, from real struggle and real redemption." The backstage area around them had grown quiet as other musicians and crew members sensed the tension in Cash's words. "Are you saying I don't have a relationship with God?" Sammy asked, his voice remaining calm but with an edge that suggested Cash was touching on something deeply personal. "I'm saying I don't know if you do. And if you don't, if you try to sing gospel music tonight just as entertainment, it'll be obvious to everyone watching." Cash paused, then delivered what amounted to a direct challenge. "I dare you to sing Amazing Graces tonight. Not as a performance, not as a showcase for your voice, but as a prayer. Sing it like you mean every word, like your soul depends on it. If you can't do that, if you can't find that place inside yourself, then maybe you should step aside for this segment." The challenge hung in the air like a thrown gauntlet. Everyone within earshot understood that this was about more than just a song choice. This was about authenticity, about the difference between performance and worship, about whether Sammy Davis Jr. had the spiritual depth to match his undeniable talent. Sammy looked at Cash for a long moment, and something passed between them. Not anger, but a kind of recognition. Cash was essentially questioning whether Sammy's faith was real or just another part of his entertainment persona. "Johnny," Sammy said quietly, "you don't know anything about my relationship with God. But you're about to find out." When the cameras rolled for the gospel segment, Cash introduced it with his characteristic solemnity. "Music has always been one of the ways human beings reach out to the divine," he said, looking directly into the camera. "Tonight we're going to share some of the most sacred music in the American tradition, songs that have comforted the afflicted, strengthened the weak, and given hope to the hopeless." He paused, then looked toward Sammy, who was standing at the side of the stage. "I've asked Sammy Davis Jr. to join me for this segment, and I've specifically requested that he sing Amazing Grace. Now this isn't a song you perform, it's a song you pray. So what you're about to hear is either going to be a genuine expression of faith, or it's going to fall flat. There's no middle ground with gospel music." The challenge was now public, broadcast to the television audience, and the pressure was enormous. Sammy walked to the center of the stage, and for a moment he stood silently, his usual showman's energy notably absent. Instead, there was a quietness about him, a stillness that the audience hadn't seen all evening. When he began to sing, something extraordinary happened. "Amazing grace, how sweet the sound, that saved a wretch like me." The voice that emerged wasn't the polished, professional instrument that audiences knew from Sammy's entertainment career. It was rawer, more vulnerable, carrying a weight of experience and pain that few people had ever heard from him publicly. Each word seemed to come from a deep place, not just from his vocal cords, but from his soul. "I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see." As Sammy continued, it became clear that he wasn't performing the song, he was living it. His interpretation drew on experiences that few in the audience knew about, the racial prejudice he had faced throughout his career, the times he had been denied basic human dignity because of his skin color, the internal struggles with identity and belonging that had marked his entire life. But more than that, his rendition spoke to a genuine relationship with faith that had sustained him through all of those challenges. This wasn't entertainment gospel, this was testimony. "'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved." Johnny Cash, standing at the side of the stage, felt something he hadn't expected. The skepticism that had motivated his challenge was being replaced by something profound, recognition that he was witnessing authentic worship, genuine spiritual expression that transcended any questions about musical genre or cultural background. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. By the time Sammy reached the final verse, his voice had taken on a quality that was both triumphant and humble, celebrating redemption while acknowledging the ongoing need for divine mercy. It was clear that every word of the song had personal meaning for him, that he was sharing not just a performance, but a piece of his spiritual journey. "When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we'd first begun." When the song ended, the silence in the Grand Ole Opry House was complete. The audience, country music purists, who had come expecting to hear Johnny Cash, and perhaps tolerating the presence of this entertainer from a different world, sat in stunned appreciation for what they had just experienced. But it was Johnny Cash's reaction that made the moment truly extraordinary. Tears were streaming down the man in black's face, the tough, uncompromising country legend who had seen every form of human experience, who had sung in prisons and honky-tonks, and had never been known to show emotion publicly, was crying openly. He walked slowly to where Sammy stood, still absorbing what had just happened, and without saying a word, embraced him. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "Sammy," he said, loud enough for the microphones to pick up, That was the most honest worship I've ever heard. I owe you an apology. I thought I knew something about gospel music, but you just taught me what it really means." The audience erupted in applause, but it wasn't the kind of applause that typically follows entertainment. It was the kind of response that comes when people recognize they have witnessed something sacred, something that transcended performance and entered the realm of genuine spiritual experience. Later, after the cameras stopped rolling, Cash and Sammy spent hours talking about faith, about music, about the different paths that had led them both to the same fundamental truths about redemption and grace. "I need to tell you something," Cash said during their conversation. "I challenged you tonight because I didn't think you could possibly understand what gospel music means. I thought it belonged to people like me, people who came from a certain background, a certain tradition." "And what do you think now?" Sammy asked. "I think God doesn't care about our backgrounds or our traditions when we come to Him honestly. I think what you did tonight proved that faith is faith. No matter what package it comes in, you didn't just sing that song, you bore witness to it." Sammy nodded, understanding that something significant had happened between them. "Johnny, I've been dealing with people questioning my authenticity my entire career. People who think that because I perform in certain venues, because I've achieved certain kinds of success, that somehow my faith isn't real. But my relationship with God has been the one constant in my life, the thing that's gotten me through every challenge, every disappointment, every moment when the world tried to tell me I wasn't good enough." "I see that now," Cash replied, "and I'm sorry I doubted it." The television special, when it aired several weeks later, became one of the most talked about musical events of the year. The segment with Sammy's rendition of Amazing Grace was replayed countless times, not just as entertainment, but as a moment of genuine spiritual power that had been captured on camera. Music critics struggled to categorize what they had witnessed. It wasn't exactly country music, it wasn't exactly entertainment gospel, and it wasn't exactly traditional spiritual singing. It was something new, a bridge between different musical worlds that had been built not through compromise or fusion, but through absolute authenticity. For Johnny Cash, the evening marked a significant evolution in his understanding of faith and music. He began actively seeking out collaborations with artists from different backgrounds, recognizing that spiritual truth could emerge from unexpected sources. "That night with Sammy taught me something important," Cash would say in later interviews. "I thought I had gospel music figured out, thought I knew who could sing it and who couldn't. But God doesn't work according to our categories. Faith is faith, and when it's real, you can hear it no matter who's singing." For Sammy, the evening provided validation of something he had always known but rarely had the opportunity to express publicly. His faith wasn't separate from his entertainment career. It was the foundation that made everything else possible. People sometimes think that being in show business means you can't be genuinely spiritual, Sammy reflected years later. But for me, every performance has been a form of prayer. Every time I've connected with an audience has been a reminder of the divine connection that makes all human communication possible. The friendship that developed between Cash and Sammy after that evening lasted for many years, built on mutual respect and shared understanding of how music could serve as a vehicle for expressing the deepest truths about human experience. They performed together several more times, always including at least one gospel song in their collaborations, and each time the result was the same, a transcendent moment when two very different artists found common ground in shared faith. The challenge that Johnny Cash had issued, that September night in Nashville, had been intended to expose what he thought was inauthentic spirituality. Instead, it revealed the profound depth of Sammy Davis Jr.'s faith, and taught both men that God's grace could be authentically expressed through any voice that was truly committed to bearing witness to divine love. Years later, when music historians studied that evening, they would recognize it as a pivotal moment, not just in the careers of both men, but in the evolution of American music itself, proof that authenticity transcends genre, that faith transcends tradition, and that the most powerful music emerges when artists are willing to be completely vulnerable before their audience and their God. If this incredible story of spiritual challenge, authentic faith, and the power of music to bridge differences inspired you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who needs to remember that authenticity matters more than background, that faith can be expressed in many different ways, and that the most powerful moments often come when we're brave enough to be completely honest about who we are. Have you ever been challenged to prove your authenticity in something you deeply believe? Let us know in the comments about the times when you had to show your true self, and don't forget to ring that notification bell for more amazing stories about the moments when music becomes prayer and performance becomes testimony.